The morning light filtered through the dusty windows of Sunshine Diner, catching the floating particles in golden beams. Jack Wilson's calloused hands moved with practiced precision over the splintered table leg, his carpenter's touch evident in every deliberate movement. Abby sat beside him, her small legs swinging beneath the table, crayon clutched in her tiny fist as she worked diligently on her drawing. Her dark hair fell in waves around her face, the same deep brown as her mother's had been. 5 years since Sarah's passing, and still Jack found himself catching these glimpses of her in their daughter. He tightened the final screw on the table leg, satisfaction warming his chest at a job well done. Small repairs like this weren't much, but they kept his name circulating around Oak Ridge. Abby's hands suddenly froze mid-stroke, her eyes widened, fixed on something near the entrance. She tugged at Jack's sleeve, her voice dropping to a concerned whisper. "Daddy, that lady looks so sad, like she's about to cry." Jack followed his daughter's gaze, squinting through the morning glare. A woman stood just inside the doorway, clutching a worn leather bag against her chest like armor. Her clothes were neat but visibly worn at the edges, her posture rigid with discomfort. Abby tugged his sleeve harder, her voice taking on that serious tone that always made her sound decades older than her 7 years. "Daddy, her heart is hurt. I can see it." Jack studied his daughter's earnest face, marveling at her intuition. Since losing her mother, Abby had developed an uncanny ability to sense pain in others, as though grief had opened some channel of empathy most adults had long closed. The woman shifted uncomfortably near the wall, scanning the busy diner with increasing desperation. No one seemed inclined to make room for a stranger. Jack hesitated, his instinct to mind his own business warring with the gentle pressure of his daughter's expectant gaze. 5 years of raising Abby alone had taught him to weigh his decisions carefully. "Should we ask her to sit with us, Daddy? We have room." Before he could second-guess himself, Jack raised his hand, catching the woman's attention with a small wave. "Excuse me, would you like to join us? There's plenty of space." The woman startled, her eyes darting around as if certain he must be addressing someone else. When she realized his invitation was genuine, her expression cycled through surprise, suspicion, and finally cautious gratitude. She took a tentative step toward them, then hesitated. "That's very kind, but I don't want to intrude on your family breakfast." Abby's face lit up, eager to reassure this stranger. "You're not intruding, I'm just coloring and Daddy fixed a table. I'm Abby, I'm 7. The woman's tight expression softened at Abby's enthusiasm. Jack recognized the universal effect of his daughter's earnestness. Abby had a way of disarming the most guarded souls with her straightforward acceptance. "I'm Jack Wilson. Please join us. These tables are meant for 4 anyway." She was halfway to accepting when Abby, in her excitement, reached for a new crayon and knocked her water glass across the table. The woman jumped back, but not quickly enough. Water splashed across her worn shoes. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." Jack grabbed napkins from the dispenser, dropping to one knee to help dry the worst of the spill from the woman's footwear. "It's fine, really. Please don't worry." The woman knelt down too, their hands almost colliding as they both blotted at her shoes. Jack noticed the careful stitching along the side of her right shoe where the leather had split and been meticulously repaired. The craftsmanship was impressive, small, even stitches that blended almost invisibly with the original material. Not a professional job, but someone with patience and skill. The incident settled the question of seating arrangements. The woman slipped into the chair across from them, her bag still clutched tightly in her lap. Up close, Jack could see the fine lines around her eyes, the slight hollowness in her cheeks that spoke of recent strain. "I'm Emma Parker. Thank you for the seat." "And the napkins." Abby immediately pushed her coloring book across the table. "Do you like to color? You can use the blue crayon. Blue is the best color." Emma hesitated, then accepted the crayon with a small smile. Her fingers were long and slender, but Jack noticed a writer's callus on her middle finger and a paper cut healing on her thumb, hands that worked with books. "What brings you to Oak Ridge?" Jack tried to keep his tone casual, not wanting to seem too inquisitive. "A job opportunity, or what I thought was one anyway." Something in Emma's voice hinted at disappointment. She added a careful stroke of blue to the corner of Abby's drawing. "Daddy builds things," Abby supplied helpfully. "He makes the most beautiful furniture ever. He made my bed that looks like a boat." Jack felt the familiar flush of pride and embarrassment at his daughter's unfiltered admiration. I'm a carpenter. I have a small workshop downtown. Wilson Woodcraft. Emma nodded, her tension visibly easing as the conversation turned away from her circumstances. That's a wonderful skill, making something substantial with your hands. The waitress appeared with Jack's coffee refill, raising an eyebrow at their new companion. Can I get you anything, honey? Emma's fingers tightened around her bag. Just a coffee, please. Black is fine. Jack noticed the quick calculation in her eyes, checking the cheapest option. The signs were adding up. The mended shoes, the worn but carefully maintained clothes, the way she'd been standing alone. The waitress returned quickly with Emma's coffee, setting down a small plate of toast as well. On the house, honey. Baker made extra this morning. Emma's throat worked as she swallowed hard, gratitude and embarrassment warring in her expression. Abby, absorbed in her coloring again, began chattering about her second-grade class, the book they were reading, and how Ms. Thompson had said her drawing of a dolphin was the best in the class. Emma listened with genuine interest, asking questions that delighted Abby. When Abby mentioned having trouble with her reading homework, Emma's eyes lit up with the first real animation he'd seen. What book are you reading in class? Charlotte's Web. I like the spider, but Jimmy Marshall said spiders are gross, and I said he's gross, and Miss Thompson said we both had to miss 5 minutes of recess. Emma's laugh was unexpected, a genuine sound that transformed her face, erasing years of worry for a brief moment. Charlotte is my favorite too. When I was about your age, I used to pretend I could talk to spiders. You did? Abby's eyes widened with newfound respect. I did. I'd tell them all my secrets because Charlotte seemed like such a good listener. Jack felt something in his chest loosen at the sound of his daughter's delighted giggle. Abby's laughter had become a rarer commodity in recent months as she'd begun asking more questions about her mother. Emma reached for her bag, then hesitated, a flash of uncertainty crossing her face before she made a decision. She carefully withdrew a small, worn paperback copy of Charlotte's Web, its cover faded but intact. I always keep a copy with me, for good luck. As Emma handed the book to Abby, the sleeve of her blouse rode up slightly, revealing a yellowish bruise circling her wrist like a bracelet. She quickly tugged the fabric down, but not before Jack had seen it. Their eyes met briefly and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Emma turned her attention back to Abby, pointing out her favorite illustration in the book. Jack sipped his coffee, giving her the privacy of not acknowledging what he'd seen. The diner's bell chimed as the door opened, admitting a blast of cool autumn air and a tall, impeccably dressed man. Robert Collins cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit, a rare sight in the casual atmosphere of Sunshine Diner. As owner of Collins Development, he stood out among the flannel shirts and work boots of the regular crowd. Jack straightened instinctively. Collins had hired him to design and build custom furniture for the new public library, the largest contract Wilson Woodcraft had landed in years. Collins surveyed the diner with the calculated assessment of someone always appraising property values. His gaze landed on their table, and he approached with the confident stride of a man accustomed to commanding attention. Wilson, good to see you. I was going to call you today about the library project. Jack stood, extending his hand, despite his dependence on the man's business. Something about Collins always set his teeth on edge, perhaps the way he looked through people rather than at them. Mr. Collins, what can I do for you? Collins barely glanced at Emma, his eyes dismissing her as unimportant before returning to Jack. The board's made some changes to the design specs. We need to discuss modifications to your furniture designs. More modern, less rustic. The way he said rustic made it sound like a flaw rather than the intentional, handcrafted aesthetic Jack had proposed and the library board had initially approved. I have the approved designs in my workshop. Maybe we could... Collins cut him off with a wave of his manicured hand. My office, 3 o'clock. Bring new sketches, something that doesn't look like it belongs in a frontier museum. Without waiting for a response, Collins turned and headed for the counter, where the owner immediately abandoned other customers to serve him personally. Jack sank back into his seat, the interaction leaving a sour taste in his mouth. He'd spent weeks perfecting those designs, creating furniture that would be both beautiful and functional. Emma was watching him with a knowing expression, her earlier vulnerability replaced by quiet understanding. Let me guess, he wants something that looks expensive without paying for quality. Jack's surprise must have shown on his face because Emma gave a small, humorless smile. I've met his type before. There was something in her voice, a hardness that hadn't been there when she spoke to Abby. An urgent repair job had just come in. Mrs. Fitzgerald's antique dining table had collapsed during her bridge club meeting. Duty calls? Emma asked, noticing his expression. Jack nodded, already calculating how to fit this emergency into his already packed day. Local antique casualty. 4 ladies and a plate of lemon bars suddenly on the floor. That got another smile from Emma. Smaller but genuine. Sounds like a rescue mission. Abby gathered her crayons with practiced efficiency, understanding the routine of her father's work. Are you going to be at the diner tomorrow? She asked Emma, hope evident in her voice. Emma hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the question. I'm not sure, sweetheart. Jack saw the uncertainty in her eyes, the careful calculation of someone watching every dollar. We come here most mornings before school, he offered casually. Abby likes their pancakes, and I fix the occasional wobbly table in exchange. It was an opening, offered without pressure. Emma tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, considering. I have a few job applications to follow up on. Maybe I'll stop by. Abby beamed, satisfied with this non-commitment, and handed Emma her blue crayon. You can keep it, so you have something blue until tomorrow. Emma accepted the crayon with the solemnity such a gift deserved. Thank you, Abby. Blue is the best color. Outside the diner, the October air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves. Jack helped Abby into his old pickup truck, securing her booster seat while she chattered about their new friend. Do you think Emma will really come tomorrow? Jack buckled her in, choosing his words carefully. I don't know, sweetie. She might be busy. I think she's lonely, Daddy. Like how you get lonely sometimes when you think I'm sleeping. Jack froze, caught off guard by his daughter's perception. He thought he'd hidden his moments of grief better than that. What makes you say that, Abby girl? She gets the same look you do, like she's remembering something sad. Jack closed the truck door, taking a moment to compose himself before walking around to the driver's side. Abby's emotional intelligence sometimes left him breathless and at a loss for how to respond. As he started the engine, he caught a glimpse of Emma walking down the street, her posture straight despite the weight she carried. Well, if she comes back tomorrow, let's make sure she knows she's welcome, okay? Abby nodded solemnly, her mission accepted. The Wilson Woodcraft Workshop occupied a converted warehouse on Oak Street, its large front windows displaying Jack's handcrafted pieces to passersby. The space smelled of sawdust and varnish. Jack lost himself in the work, finding comfort in the tangible problems of wood and joinery, so much more straightforward than the complexities of raising a child alone or navigating the ever-changing demands of clients like Collins. Collins Development occupied the top floor of the only 3-story building in downtown Oak Ridge, a renovated former bank that now housed the most expensive offices in the small town. The receptionist barely glanced at Jack as she announced his arrival. Collins kept him waiting for 20 minutes, a power play Jack had come to expect. When finally ushered into the corner office, he found Collins on the phone, gesturing for Jack to sit without interrupting his conversation. Listen, I don't care what the old woman says. The property is prime real estate, and she can't maintain it properly with her condition. Make her a final offer, and make it clear this is as good as it gets. Collins hung up without a goodbye, turning his attention to Jack with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Wilson, let's talk about this library project. I've been reviewing the designs, and frankly, they're not what we need for a modern community space. Jack opened his portfolio, spreading the carefully rendered sketches across Collins's glass desk. These designs were approved by the library board last month. Mrs. Henderson specifically mentioned liking the reading nooks with built-in shelving. Collins waved his hand dismissively. Caroline Henderson doesn't have the vision for what this town needs. We're creating a digital learning center, not some quaint reading room. I need sleek, minimal, contemporary. The subtext was clear. Cheaper materials, less craftsmanship, more profit margin for Collins Development. Jack kept his expression neutral, years of client negotiations having taught him to hide his frustration. I can certainly create some alternative designs, but the materials we discussed, the solid oak and maple, those provide longevity. They'll still be standing when trendy materials would need replacement. Collins leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. Let me be direct, Wilson. Your original bid was accepted because of your reputation in town. But I have contractors from St. Paul who can produce similar furniture at 60% of your quote. I'm giving you the courtesy of a chance to remain on this project because of our community connections. The threat was thinly veiled. Jack thought of his mortgage payment, Abby's school expenses, the lean winter months ahead. Pride was a luxury he couldn't always afford as a single father. I understand. I'll have revised designs for you by Monday. Collins nodded, already reaching for his phone, signaling the end of their meeting. Make them impressive, Wilson. This is a legacy project for Oak Ridge. As Jack gathered his rejected sketches, Collins paused, as if remembering something. By the way, do you know Martha Johnson? Owns that old bookstore on Maple? Jack's hand stilled. Martha had been his wife's closest friend, a surrogate grandmother to Abby since Sarah's death. Yes, I know Martha well. Why? Collins shrugged, his interest seemingly casual. She had an accident, fell and broke her hip, I hear. Shame about her store having to close. Prime location, though. Jack straightened, his protective instincts flaring. Martha's injured? When did this happen? Few days ago. She's at Oak Ridge Memorial, though at her age, recovery can be complicated. The calculating look in Collins' eyes made Jack's stomach turn. He thanked Collins stiffly and left, pulling out his phone as soon as the elevator doors closed. Martha Johnson had owned Oak Ridge Bookhaven for over 40 years. The small, cluttered bookstore had been a sanctuary for Jack's wife during her illness, the place where Sarah would sit for hours when she had the strength, losing herself in stories when reality became too painful. And now she was in the hospital, her store closed, and Robert Collins was circling like a vulture. Jack changed direction, heading for Oak Ridge Memorial instead of back to his workshop. The hospital's antiseptic smell hit him as soon as he entered, a scent that still triggered memories of Sarah's final weeks. He was directed to the third floor, and as he approached room 312, he heard voices, one the familiar, though weaker, tone of Martha Johnson, and another male voice he recognized all too well. Jack paused outside the door, listening. Mrs. Johnson, I understand your attachment to the building, but realistically, you're looking at months of rehabilitation. The property taxes alone will be a burden while the store sits empty. My offer is more than fair considering the building's condition. Martha's response was faint but firm. That store was my husband's legacy, Mr. Collins. It's not just a building to me. All the more reason to consider my offer now while you have options. Wait too long and you might be facing foreclosure instead of a comfortable retirement. Jack knocked firmly on the doorframe, stepping into the room with a fixed smile. Martha, I just heard about your fall. I'm so sorry I didn't know sooner. Martha Johnson lay against the hospital pillows, her usually vibrant face pale and drawn with pain. Still, her eyes brightened at the sight of Jack. Jack Wilson, as I live and breathe, come give an old woman a hug. Jack crossed to her bedside, carefully embracing her frail shoulders while nodding curtly to Collins. Mr. Collins, twice in one day, what are the odds? Collins's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Wilson, I was just discussing some business opportunities with Mrs. Johnson. Martha patted Jack's hand, her paper-thin skin cool against his palm. This young man wants to buy my bookstore. Seems to think I'm ready for a retirement home and jigsaw puzzles. Despite her light tone, Jack could see the worry in her eyes. Martha was 82 and a broken hip at her age was serious. The bookstore was not just her livelihood, but her purpose, the place where she'd continued to feel connected to her late husband. Collins checked his watch with exaggerated impatience. I'll let you visit with your friend. Think about my offer, Mrs. Johnson. It won't be on the table indefinitely. After Collins left, Martha sank back against her pillows with a sigh. That man has been hovering since they brought me in, like a carrion bird waiting for me to give up the ghost. Jack pulled a chair to her bedside. How bad is it, Martha? The truth, her mouth tightened into a determined line. Broken hip, some bruising. Doctor says I'm looking at 6 to 8 weeks before I can put weight on it, then physical therapy. But the real problem is the store. Thomas never believed in insurance. Said books would protect themselves. Now I'm losing income every day that those doors stay closed. Jack considered this problem, running through potential solutions. What about hiring someone temporarily? You must have contacts through the bookstore. Martha shook her head sadly. My last part-timer left for college in August. I've been running it alone since then. And who would I trust with the rare collection? Thomas's books are worth more than the building itself. Jack remembered the climate-controlled room at the back of the store, Thomas Johnson's pride and joy, a collection of first editions and signed copies gathered over a lifetime of bibliophilia. Martha grimaced but obediently swallowed the pills offered. They keep me so foggy I can barely think straight, Jack. How am I supposed to make decisions about the store like this? Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. Don't make any decisions right now, especially not with Collins breathing down your neck. Let me see if I can help figure something out about the store. Martha's eyes were already growing heavy from the medication. You're a good boy, Jack. Sarah chose well. The familiar pang struck his heart at the mention of his wife. Martha was one of the few people who still spoke of Sarah regularly, keeping her memory alive in ways that were both painful and precious to Jack. As he left the hospital, Jack was so absorbed in these thoughts that he nearly collided with someone turning the corner. He stepped back, an apology ready on his lips, and found himself face to face with Emma herself. Her surprise mirrored his own, but there was something else in her expression, a wariness that hadn't been there during their breakfast conversation. Jack. Hello again, Ma. Her name came out more breathlessly than he'd intended. Small towns meant frequent coincidental encounters, but this felt somehow significant. I was just at the hospital visiting a friend. Emma shifted the weight of her bag, glancing down the street as if calculating an escape route. I hope your friend is okay. Broken hip. She's elderly, so it's complicated. Actually, she owns the bookstore in town, Oak Ridge Bookhaven. She's worried about it sitting empty while she recovers. Something flickered in Emma's eyes. Recognition, perhaps? Oak Ridge Bookhaven? On Maple Street? Jack nodded, studying her reaction. You know it. Emma's posture changed subtly, a new tension entering her shoulders. That's why I came to Oak Ridge. There was a bond listing, assistant manager position. When I arrived yesterday, the store was closed. No note, no explanation. The pieces clicked into place in Jack's mind. The bump Emma thought she had, the disappointment in her voice at breakfast, her obvious knowledge of books. That would have been Martha's listing. She fell 3 days ago. Must have been right after she posted the position. Emma pressed her lips together, processing this information. I see. That explains it. I thought perhaps it was a scam, or the position had been filled. Jack hesitated, then made a split-second decision. Would you like to visit her? Martha Johnson, the owner. She's at Oak Ridge Memorial. Visiting hours are almost over, but we might catch her before she falls asleep. Emma looked startled by the suggestion. Visit her? But I don't know her. Wouldn't that be intrusive? She's worried sick about her store sitting empty. And you came all the way here for that job. Seems like you two should at least meet. Jack could see Emma weighing the propriety of such a visit against practical considerations. Finally, she nodded. If you think it wouldn't be an imposition, I'd like that. I hate unresolved situations. They walked together toward the hospital, an unexpected companionship forming in their shared mission. You said you worked in a bookstore before? He asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Emma nodded, a genuine warmth entering her voice for the first time. Lakeside Books in Chicago. 8 years. I started as a clerk and became the children's literature specialist. I ran the Saturday morning reading program. That explains why you were so good with Abby. You're a professional kid whisperer. Her laugh was brief but real, a sound Jack found himself wanting to hear again. Children are the best readers. They don't pretend to like things just because they should. Their enthusiasm is pure. When they reached Martha's room, they found her awake but groggy, her white hair a stark contrast against the institutional blue pillowcase. Her eyes widened at the sight of Jack returning with a stranger. Martha, this is Emma Parker. She came to Oak Ridge for the position you advertised at the bookstore. Martha's roomy eyes sharpened with interest, assessing Emma with the practiced gaze of someone who had sized up customers for decades. Well, you certainly have good timing, dear, or terrible timing, depending on how you look at it. Emma stepped forward, her professional demeanor sliding into place. I'm sorry about your accident, Mrs. Johnson. I know this isn't the ideal way to meet, but I wanted to introduce myself since I'd come specifically for the position. Martha gestured for Emma to come closer, patting the edge of the bed. Sit, sit. Tell me about yourself. What's your background with books? As Emma began describing her experience at Lakeside Books, Jack marveled at the transformation. The hesitant woman from the diner was gone, replaced by a confident professional discussing inventory systems, community outreach, and preservation techniques for older volumes. Jack stepped back, letting their conversation flow without his intervention. There was a natural chemistry between them, the immediate connection of two people who spoke the same language of literature and curation. And your specialty was children's literature? Martha was asking, her interest clearly piqued. Emma nodded, a passionate light entering her eyes. Children's and young adult. I believe getting the right book into a child's hands at the right moment can change their entire relationship with reading. Martha shot a triumphant look at Jack as if to say, I like this one. That's precisely what Thomas always said. My late husband founded the store. He believed books find their readers when they're meant to. Their conversation continued, moving from professional credentials to favorite authors and memorable customer interactions. Jack watched as Martha's initial skepticism gave way to genuine appreciation for Emma's knowledge and obvious love of books. Finally, Martha turned to Jack with a decisive nod. Jack Wilson, I believe you've found the solution to my problem. Jack raised his eyebrows, though he'd been thinking the same thing. You two seem to speak the same language. Martha reached for Emma's hand, her expression serious despite the medication's effect. My dear, would you consider running the store while I recover? I can't pay much. Small-town bookstore margins are thinner than these hospital sheets. But there's an apartment above the shop that comes with the position. It's small, but it's furnished. Emma's composure slipped, genuine shock replacing her professional mask. Mrs. Johnson, you hardly know me. The store, your husband's books. Martha waved away her concern with surprising vigor for someone on pain medication. I've been matching people with books for 50 years, child. I know character when I see it. Besides, Jack brought you here and I trust his judgment. Jack felt a surge of responsibility at Martha's words. He'd acted on instinct, but now realized he was effectively vouching for Emma, a woman he'd met only hours ago. Emma looked between them, clearly overwhelmed by the sudden offer. I would need to think about it. It's a significant responsibility. Martha nodded, her eyelids growing heavy as the medication took stronger hold. Of course, dear. But don't think too long. That vulture Collins is circling my store, and I need someone guarding the nest. As Martha's eyes drifted closed, Jack gestured toward the door, and they stepped quietly into the hallway. That was unexpected, Emma said once they were out of earshot. She trusts very easily for someone with a rare book collection. Jack shook his head, smiling slightly. Actually, Martha doesn't trust easily at all. She's turned down perfectly qualified applicants because she didn't like their book aura, whatever that means. She must have seen something special in you. Emma looked doubtful, fidgeting with the strap of her bag. Or she's desperate and heavily medicated. Jack laughed, surprised by her dry humor. Possibly both. But her instincts about people are usually spot on. And you do know books. They walked together through the hospital corridors, the fluorescent lights harsh after the warm glow of sunset outside. Jack could almost see Emma processing the opportunity, weighing pros and cons. Where are you staying now, he asked, realizing he knew almost nothing about her practical circumstances. Emma hesitated before answering, as if debating how much to reveal. The Pinecone Motel, just temporarily while I figure things out. Jack knew the place. A budget motel on the outskirts of town, charging by the week for rooms that hadn't seen renovations since the 1980s. The apartment above the bookstore is nice, he offered carefully. Small, but Martha keeps it ready for visiting authors or family. It has character. Emma took a deep breath, seeming to draw strength from the night air. I should see the store before making any decision, and I'd want clear parameters about responsibilities, compensation, living arrangements. Jack nodded, respecting her practical approach. That's reasonable. I have a key to the store. Martha asked me to check on it occasionally when she travels. We could look at it tomorrow morning if you'd like. I could bring Abby before school. At the mention of his daughter, Emma's expression softened. How is Abby with books? Does she take after her mother that way? The question caught Jack off guard, not because it was inappropriate, but because few people asked about Sarah in relation to Abby anymore. She does, actually. Sarah was an English teacher before Abby was born. She read to her every night, even in the hospital, toward the end. Emma's eyes held understanding rather than pity. Books can be anchors when everything else is shifting. Places to find yourself when you feel lost. The simple truth of her words resonated deeply. Jack had watched Sarah retreat into books as her body failed her, finding solace in familiar stories when reality became too harsh. Yes, that's exactly it. They reached the corner where their paths would diverge. Emma back to the Pinecone Motel, Jack to his workshop to collect Abby from Miguel's care. So, tomorrow morning? Emma confirmed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Say 9 at the bookstore? Jack nodded, surprised by his own eagerness to continue their conversation. 9 works. Abby will be excited to see you again. Jack was nearly at the workshop door when his phone buzzed with a text. An unknown number, but the message made his blood run cold. Wilson, reconsider bringing that woman to Martha's store. Some people aren't who they claim to be. For your daughter's sake, be careful who you trust. A concerned citizen. Jack stared at the screen, the pleasant evening suddenly feeling much darker. Who would send such a message? Who even knew about Emma and the potential arrangement with Martha? Only Collins had been at the hospital, and Jack hadn't mentioned their plans to visit the store. He slipped the phone back into his pocket without responding, unsettled but determined not to let an anonymous threat derail what could be a solution for both Martha and Emma. Still, as he pulled open the workshop door, greeted by Abby's delighted "Daddy," a new wariness had taken root. Tomorrow would indeed tell him more, not just about the bookstore's possibilities, but about the mysterious Emma Parker and whoever was concerned enough about her presence in Oak Ridge to send a warning. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that showcased Oak Ridge at its best. Maple trees lining Main Street blazed in shades of crimson and gold, their fallen leaves crunching satisfyingly underfoot as Jack and Abby made their way toward Oak Ridge Bookhaven. Abby skipped alongside him, excitement visible in every movement. She'd been thrilled at the prospect of seeing Emma again, and even more delighted when Jack explained they were going to visit Miss Martha's bookstore. Will Emma really work at the bookstore, Daddy? And live there too? Like in a fairy tale? Jack squeezed his daughter's hand gently. Maybe. She hasn't decided yet, and it would only be temporary while Miss Martha gets better. But she could read stories to kids like she did at her old bookstore. I could help her. I'm a good helper. As they rounded the corner onto Maple Street, Jack spotted Emma already waiting outside the bookstore. She wore the same clothes as yesterday, but had added a light scarf that brightened her appearance. She was studying the storefront with professional interest. Emma! Abby broke free from Jack's hand, running the last few yards to greet her new friend. Did you bring your Charlotte book? Daddy says you might work here and live upstairs like a fairy tale. Emma caught Abby's exuberance with a gentle smile, kneeling to meet her at eye level. Good morning to you too, Miss Abby. I did bring Charlotte with me just in case you wanted to see her again. Jack approached more slowly, taking in the interaction with parental assessment. Emma's warmth toward Abby seemed genuine, not performed for his benefit. Morning, Emma. Hope you haven't been waiting long. She straightened, brushing dust from her knees. Not at all. I was enjoying the architecture. This building must have stories of its own. Jack withdrew the key from his pocket, suddenly aware of the responsibility Martha had entrusted to him. It does. It was a hardware store in the 1940s, then a small grocery. Thomas, Martha's husband, bought it in 1962 and converted it to a bookstore. As Jack unlocked the door, the familiar scent of books greeted them. That particular blend of paper, leather, and dust that formed the perfume of Oak Ridge Bookhaven. Emma inhaled deeply, a look of recognition and pleasure crossing her face. That smell. It's the same in every real bookstore, isn't it? Jack nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Not the sterile, coffee-tinged atmosphere of chain bookstores, but the complex aroma of literary history, of pages turned and stories shared across generations. He flicked on the lights, illuminating the cluttered charm of Martha's domain. Bookshelves created a labyrinth throughout the space, some reaching to the ceiling, others forming cozy nooks with reading chairs. The checkout counter was an antique library desk, complete with a brass lamp and an ancient cash register that Martha stubbornly used alongside a modern credit card system. Abby immediately headed for the children's section in the back corner, where a small table and chairs sat surrounded by colorful book displays. "This is where Mommy used to read to me," she announced, pulling out a tiny chair. "Emma, will you read something, please?" Emma glanced at Jack, seeking permission. He nodded, watching as she carefully selected a picture book from the shelf and joined Abby at the table. While Emma read to Abby, Jack moved through the store, checking that everything was as it should be. At the back of the store, a heavy oak door led to Thomas Johnson's special collection room. Jack hesitated before this door, key in hand. Martha had entrusted him with access to this room, a significant demonstration of her faith in him. Should he show it to Emma? After a moment's consideration, he decided transparency was best. If Emma was going to consider taking responsibility for the store, she should understand exactly what that entailed, including the most valuable part of Martha's inventory. "Emma," Jack called softly, not wanting to interrupt the story too abruptly, "when you have a moment, there's something important you should see." She finished the page she was reading, promised Abby she'd continue later, and joined Jack at the oak door. "Special collection," she guessed, noting the serious security lock. "Thomas Johnson's pride and joy. Martha keeps the most valuable items in here. Climate-controlled, special insurance. It's part of what makes this store unique and what makes the responsibility significant." Jack unlocked the door, revealing a small room lined with glass-fronted bookcases. Unlike the cheerful disorder of the main store, this space was meticulously organized, with proper archival storage and museum-quality display cases for the most fragile items. Emma stepped inside, her professional assessment evident in her careful gaze. First editions, signed copies, rare printings. This is a serious collection. Jack nodded, watching her reaction closely. Thomas spent his life building it. Some pieces are genuinely valuable. That Hemingway over there is worth more than my truck. Others are valuable only to Martha for sentimental reasons. Emma moved carefully through the room, maintaining a respectful distance from the shelves, her hands clasped behind her back as if to remove any temptation to touch. This would be a significant responsibility. Proper handling, security, insurance considerations. Her voice trailed off as she spotted something in one of the cases, a leather-bound volume with gilt edges. "Is that a first edition of Little Women?" Jack followed her gaze, impressed by her recognition. "It is one of Thomas's prize finds. Martha says he traded a car for it back in the 70s. Emma's expression held reverence rather than calculation. "I can see why. The condition is remarkable." The store's front door suddenly rattled, followed by insistent knocking. Jack moved to answer it, finding a delivery man with a large floral arrangement, an elaborate display of expensive blooms that seemed wildly out of place in the homey bookstore. "Delivery for Mrs. Martha Johnson." The man thrust a clipboard at Jack for signature. Jack signed, accepting the ostentatious arrangement with puzzlement. As the delivery man left, he checked the card attached to the flowers. "Wishing you a speedy recovery. Looking forward to our upcoming business arrangement. Robert Collins." The presumption in those words made Jack's jaw tighten. Collins was acting as though Martha's sale of the bookstore was already decided, a manipulative tactic designed to create a sense of inevitability. "Problem?" Emma asked, noting his expression as she approached. Jack handed her the card wordlessly. She read it, her reaction subtle but noticeable. A slight stiffening of her shoulders, a tightening around her eyes. "Robert Collins seems very interested in this property," she observed, her tone carefully neutral. Jack placed the flowers on the counter, deciding Martha could choose what to do with them later. "He's a developer. Sees dollar signs where others see history." Emma handed the card back to Jack, her fingers trembling slightly. "I should tell you something about Collins." Before she could continue, the front door opened again, this time without knocking. Robert Collins himself stood in the entrance, immaculate in another expensive suit. His surprise at finding people in the store quickly masked by smooth confidence. "Wilson, twice in one day yesterday, now again this morning. People will talk." His gaze shifted to Emma, and Jack saw a flash of recognition cross Collins's face. followed immediately by something darker, more calculating. And you brought a friend. I don't believe we've been introduced. Emma had gone very still, her face composed but pale. Mr. Collins, Emma Parker. Her tone was professionally polite, but Jack could sense tension radiating from her. Collins stepped forward, extending his hand with practiced charm. Ms. Parker, new in town? Emma accepted the handshake briefly, withdrawing her hand as quickly as politeness allowed. Yes, just arrived. Collins smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Small world. I knew a Parker family in Chicago. Any relation? Before Emma could answer, Abby emerged from the children's section, breaking the tense moment with her cheerful presence. Daddy, can we show Emma the apartment upstairs? Does it have bookshelves too? Collins' eyebrows rose at this exchange, his gaze moving between Jack and Emma with new interest. Apartment? Are you considering a position here, Ms. Parker? Jack stepped forward slightly, unconsciously placing himself between Collins and Emma. Martha asked Emma to consider managing the store during her recovery. Emma has extensive bookstore experience. Collins' smile remained fixed, but something hardened in his expression. How fortunate for Martha, though I wonder if it's wise to make such arrangements in her diminished state. The implication that Martha was mentally compromised raised Jack's hackles, but he kept his tone level. Martha's mind is as sharp as ever. Her body just needs time to heal. Collins nodded as though conceding the point, though his expression suggested otherwise. Of course. Well, I won't interrupt your tour. Ms. Parker, welcome to Oak Ridge. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. The way he emphasized seeing carried an undercurrent that made Jack instinctively move closer to Abby. Emma simply nodded, her composure maintained despite the obvious tension. After Collins left, a heavy silence filled the bookstore. Abby, sensing the adult discomfort but not understanding its source, tugged at Jack's hand. Can we still see the apartment, Daddy? Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. Sure thing, Abby girl. It's just up these stairs. He led them to a door behind the checkout counter, unlocking it to reveal a narrow staircase. Emma followed, her earlier enthusiasm noticeably dampened by Collins' appearance. The apartment above Oak Ridge Bookhaven was a cozy one-bedroom space with slanted ceilings and dormer windows that overlooked Maple Street. Though small, it was charming, furnished simply but comfortably, with pieces that, like everything associated with Martha, told a story of their own. Abby immediately ran to the window seat, claiming it as her favorite spot. You could read books here and see the whole town. Emma smiled at Abby's enthusiasm, but Jack noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. It's a lovely space, she acknowledged, running her hand along a bookshelf built into the wall. Perfect for a bookseller. Jack watched her carefully, sensing her withdrawal. Emma, what were you going to say? About Collins? She met his gaze directly, something resolute replacing her earlier tension. Robert Collins is my ex-husband's brother. That's why I recognized his name yesterday at the hospital, and why he recognized me just now, though he pretended not to. The revelation hung in the air between them. Jack felt pieces clicking into place. Her reaction to Collins' name, the warning text he'd received, the fading bruise on her wrist. Your ex-husband, the one in Chicago? Emma nodded, her composure remarkable given the circumstances. Michael Thompson. I kept my maiden name after the divorce. The Collins family is influential in Chicago business circles. Robert helped Michael hide assets during our divorce. They left me with nothing. The matter-of-fact way she delivered this information, without self-pity or drama, struck Jack powerfully. He thought of the anonymous text warning him about Emma, and suddenly had a good idea of its source. That's why you came to Oak Ridge, to get away from them? Emma moved to join Abby at the window seat, giving herself a moment before responding. I came for the job. I needed work, and I have the experience. The distance from Chicago was a significant bonus. Jack considered this new information, weighing it against what he had observed of Emma's character. The warning text now seemed less like a legitimate concern and more like intimidation. Collins attempting to isolate Emma from potential allies in her new town. Does Collins being here change your decision about the position? Emma looked out over the town, her profile thoughtful against the morning light. It should. Logically, I should walk away, find another small town without complications. But, Jack prompted gently when she didn't continue. Emma turned to face him fully, determination evident in her straightened shoulders. But I'm tired of running. I'm tired of letting them dictate my choices. And Martha needs help, real help from someone who understands books and cares about what she's built here. Abby, who had been unusually quiet during this adult conversation, suddenly spoke up with a child's innocent perception. Is Mr. Collins a bad man? He looks at people funny, like they're things and not people. Jack and Emma exchanged a glance, momentarily united in the parental dilemma of how to answer such a question honestly without burdening a child with adult complexities. Emma knelt beside Abby, choosing her words carefully. Some people, Abby, are more interested in what they can get from others than in how they can help. That doesn't always make them bad, exactly, but it doesn't make them kind either. Abby considered this with serious concentration. Like in Charlotte's Web, Templeton the rat only helps when he gets something too. Emma smiled genuinely this time. Exactly like that. You're very wise for 7, you know. Abby beamed at the compliment, then turned to Jack with the decisive energy of a child who has solved an adult problem. Daddy, Emma should definitely stay here and take care of Miss Martha's books. And we can help her if Mr. Collins is mean, right? Jack felt a surge of pride in his daughter's instinctive compassion, a quality Sarah had possessed in abundance. That's Emma's decision, Abby. But yes, we help our friends in Oak Ridge. Emma looked between them, something softening in her expression. Thank you, both of you. I think I would like to accept Martha's offer, if she's still certain when she's not on pain medication. The decision seemed to lighten something in her, a burden partially set down, if not entirely relinquished. Jack checked his watch, suddenly aware of the time. We should get Abby to school, and I have client meetings this morning. But maybe we could visit Martha together this afternoon? Make it official? Emma nodded, her practical nature reasserting itself. I'll need to get my things from the motel. And there's paperwork to consider, insurance, store policies, access to accounts. Jack smiled at her thoroughness. Martha will have all that organized. For someone who runs a chaotic-looking bookstore, she's surprisingly meticulous about documentation. As they descended the stairs back to the main floor of the bookstore, the morning sunlight streamed through the front windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the potential of the space. Despite Collins' unwelcome appearance and the complications it suggested, Jack felt oddly hopeful about the arrangement taking shape. Emma moved through the store with a professional eye, straightening books here, noting areas for improvement there. She paused at the children's section, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. This area has so much potential. With just a few changes, it could be magical. Abby slipped her small hand into Emma's, looking up with complete confidence. You can make it magic. I'll help. The simple trust in his daughter's gesture, and Emma's gentle acceptance of it, settled something in Jack's mind. Whatever complications Emma's past with the Collins family might bring, her connection with Abby and her obvious love for books suggested she was exactly what Martha's store needed. As they prepared to leave, Jack noticed Emma gazing at the special collection room with a mixture of reverence and concern. I'll need to learn proper handling techniques for the rare books, and the security system should be updated. Her focus on protection rather than exploitation further confirmed his developing impression of her character. Martha has documentation on all of it. She'll walk you through everything once she's feeling better. Outside, the autumn morning had blossomed into full glory, leaves shimmering gold against a perfectly blue sky. Abby skipped ahead, energized by the prospect of telling her friends about her new friend Emma, who would be working at the bookstore. Jack and Emma followed at a more measured pace, a comfortable silence between them born of shared purpose. Whatever complications lay ahead with Collins, Martha's recovery, or Emma's past, this moment held a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place in a pattern that made sense. That feeling lasted until they reached the corner where their paths would diverge. Jack and Abby toward the elementary school, Emma toward the Pinecone Motel to collect her belongings. As they prepared to part ways, Jack noticed a black luxury sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the driver. But he didn't need to see inside to guess who might be watching their movements with calculated interest. The morning's hopefulness dimmed slightly under this observation, replaced by a protective resolve. Martha's bookstore, Emma's fresh start, his daughter's happiness, all seemed suddenly more fragile. more in need of defense against whatever plans Robert Collins might be formulating behind that sleek black windshield. Emma noticed the car too, her step faltering momentarily before she straightened her shoulders with deliberate confidence. "I'll meet you at the hospital at 3?" Jack nodded, admiring her courage in the face of intimidation. 3 o'clock. I'll bring the paperwork, Martha mentioned. As they parted ways, Jack lifted Abby onto his shoulders for the final block to school, her delighted laughter a reminder of what truly mattered. Emma walked in the opposite direction, her pace steady and purposeful, despite the watching car. The black sedan pulled away from the curb, following Emma at a discreet distance. Jack watched until it turned the corner, a knot of concern forming in his stomach. Whatever game Collins was playing, it clearly involved Emma, and now, by extension, involved Jack and Abby as well. The simple task of helping Martha find a temporary manager for her bookstore had suddenly become much more complicated. But as Jack listened to Abby chattering happily about Emma's storytelling and the magical bookstore, he found himself strangely unwilling to step away from these complications. Sometimes the most worthwhile projects were also the most challenging. True of furniture making, true of parenting, and perhaps true of helping a wounded woman find her footing in a new town, despite those who might prefer to see her fall. 3 days after Emma Parker moved into the apartment above Oak Ridge Bookhaven, the old building seemed to exhale, settling into a new rhythm. Morning light flooded through freshly washed windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above polished shelves. The musty scent of neglected corners had given way to lemon polish and fresh coffee, wafting from the small machine Emma had set up near the register. Jack paused in the doorway, taking in the subtle transformation. The cluttered charm remained, but order had emerged from chaos. Books aligned on shelves, pathways cleared between sections, handwritten recommendation cards appearing beneath select titles. Emma moved among the stacks with quiet purpose, a clipboard in hand as she conducted inventory. "You've been busy." Emma looked up, a pencil tucked behind her ear. Her clothes were still worn but pressed clean, and something about her posture had shifted, more upright, less defensive. The store needed structure before reopening. "I've been cataloging what's here and planning what we need." Jack set his toolbox on the counter. He'd promised to fix the sticky back door and repair several shelves before the store's official reopening on Monday. Martha will hardly recognize the place. In a good way. A key clicked in the front lock, and Jack tensed instinctively. Few people had access to the store while it remained closed. His muscles relaxed when the door swung open to reveal Mayor Caroline Henderson, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. "Miss Parker, I hoped I'd find you here. The hospital said you'd been by early to see Martha. She's full of praise for what you're doing with the store." Emma wiped her hands on her jeans, extending one to the mayor. "Mrs. Henderson, Martha mentioned you're on the library board. It's a pleasure to meet you." The mayor beamed, clasping Emma's hand in both of hers. "The pleasure is mine. Martha Johnson has been the backbone of this town's literary life for decades. We were all devastated by her accident. To find someone qualified to keep the store running, it's nothing short of miraculous." Jack noticed the slight flush creeping up Emma's neck at the praise. She still received compliments like unexpected gifts with surprise and faint suspicion. "I've only been here 3 days. There's a lot left to do before Monday's reopening." The mayor waved away her modesty, casting an appreciative eye around the transformed space. "But you've already accomplished so much." The town council is thrilled. Oak Ridge Bookhaven is more than just a store. It's a community institution. Jack recognized the political undertones in Caroline's enthusiasm. The upcoming town council election had turned surprisingly contentious, with Robert Collins backing a challenger who advocated for modernization, code for development projects that would reshape Oak Ridge's historic downtown. The mayor lowered her voice, leaning closer to Emma. "Between us, I'm delighted to see someone standing up to Robert Collins. His offer for this building was shamefully opportunistic. Taking advantage of Martha's situation that way." Emma's expression remained carefully neutral. "I'm just running the store temporarily while Martha recovers. Any property decisions are entirely hers." The mayor's eyebrows rose at Emma's diplomatic response. "Well said. Very professional. Still, it's good to have new blood in town who isn't easily intimidated by the Collins name." Jack intervened, sensing Emma's discomfort. Mayor Henderson, did you need something specific today? The store isn't officially open yet. The mayor straightened, switching to official business. Yes, actually. The school board is planning the annual Literacy Week next month. We've always partnered with Martha for author visits and special events. I wanted to ensure those arrangements would continue with temporary management. Emma's professional demeanor took over, her knowledge of literary events immediately apparent. I'd be happy to coordinate. In Chicago, I ran our children's program and organized author visits. I still have some publishing contacts who might be interested. The mayor's pleasure was evident as she and Emma fell into easy conversation about literacy initiatives. Jack excused himself to the back room, tools in hand, leaving them to their planning. The storeroom told a different story than the increasingly orderly front. Boxes teetered in precarious stacks, decades of Martha's acquisitions and correspondence creating a paper labyrinth. Jack navigated to the back door, examining the frame where it had warped with age and moisture. As he worked, loosening hinges and planing the edge where wood had swelled, he could hear fragments of conversation from the front. Emma's measured tones interspersed with the mayor's more animated responses. Their voices fell silent as the bell above the front door jingled, announcing another visitor. The new voice carried clearly through the old building. Robert Collins, his tone professionally cordial but underlined with steel. Mayor Henderson, what a surprise finding you here. I thought you'd be preparing for tonight's council meeting. Jack set down his tools, edging closer to listen. The back door could wait. Mr. Collins? Yes, indeed, just finishing up some community business with Ms. Parker, our new temporary bookstore manager. Emma's greeting was so formal it bordered on chilly. Mr. Collins, good morning. Jack could picture Collins's calculating gaze taking in the store's improvements, assessing how this affected his plans. Quite the transformation already. Though I question the wisdom of investing too much effort in, temporary arrangements. The mayor's voice sharpened. The arrangements may be temporary, Mr. Collins, but Oak Ridge Bookhaven's place in this community is permanent. Martha will be pleased to return to her store in such good condition. Collins' laugh held no humor. At her age and with that injury, let's be realistic, Caroline. Recovery will be lengthy if it happens at all. Sometimes we must accept when a chapter is ending. Jack gripped the door frame, a wave of protectiveness surging through him. Before he could intervene, Emma's voice cut through the tension, quiet but firm. Mr. Collins, have you visited Martha recently? Her doctor expects a full recovery with proper rehabilitation. The store will be waiting for her, however long that takes. Jack could almost feel Collins's smile, the predatory one that never reached his eyes. Such loyalty after knowing her 3 days? Admirable. Though in my experience, loyalty is rarely rewarded in business. Speaking of which, Mayor Henderson, I prepared some projections for tonight's meeting about tax revenue from my proposed development. Perhaps you'd like a preview? The mayor's voice cooled to match Emma's. Save it for the meeting, Robert. The council will consider all perspectives, including the value of historical preservation and existing local businesses. Their conversation shifted to stilted pleasantries before the bell jingled again, signaling Collins's departure. Jack waited a moment before emerging from the storeroom, tools in hand, as if he hadn't been listening. Mayor Henderson was collecting her purse, expression troubled. That man becomes more brazen by the day. I should warn you both, he's been meeting privately with council members, making grand promises about economic revitalization. Emma glanced toward the front window, where Collins's black sedan still idled at the curb. He's not just after this building, is he? The mayor shook her head, silver hair catching the light. Robert wants the entire historic block for his mixed-use development. Luxury condos, high-end retail, office space. Martha's store is just the first domino he needs to fall. Jack felt the weight of this revelation settle between his shoulders. The library furniture contract suddenly made more sense, Collins keeping him financially invested in staying on good terms, even as he plotted to transform Jack's beloved hometown. I should go prepare for this meeting. Emma, I'll email you about those Literacy Week plans. Jack, I hope I'll see you tonight as well. The council needs to hear from longtime residents, not just developers with deep pockets. After the mayor left, silence filled the store. Emma returned to her inventory, but her movements had lost their earlier rhythm. becoming mechanical and distracted. You okay? She looked up, her expression guarded. He's not going to stop, Jack. This isn't just about a grudge against me anymore. He wants this property, and he'll keep coming until he gets it. Jack moved closer, setting his tools on the counter. Maybe, but he doesn't know Oak Ridge like I do. This town doesn't change easily, and it protects its own. Emma's smile held no mirth. And am I one of its own now, after 3 days? The question hung between them, layered with meaning. Before Jack could answer, the bell chimed again, as Abby burst through the door, backpack bouncing, Miguel following more sedately behind. Emma, Daddy, look what I made in art class. It's for the bookstore. Abby thrust forward a construction paper creation, a brightly colored sign reading Grand Reopening, decorated with crayon books and stick figure customers. Miguel shrugged apologetically. Sorry, Jack. School let out early for teacher meetings. I picked her up, but she insisted on coming straight here. Emma knelt to examine Abby's artwork, her troubled expression transforming into genuine delight. This is perfect, Abby. We needed a sign for the window. Did you know professional artists get paid for their work? Emma reached into the register, extracted a crisp $1 bill, and presented it to Abby with formal gravity. For your first commission piece. We'll need more for future events, if you're available. Abby's eyes widened at this unexpected validation of her talent. She clutched the dollar with reverence. I can make lots more. I can do Halloween ones and Christmas ones and... As Abby launched into her artistic plans, Jack watched the interaction with a tightening in his chest. His daughter, who had been so reserved with strangers since Sarah's death, had blossomed in Emma's presence. 3 days, and already there was an ease between them that felt both wonderful and terrifying. Miguel sidled closer to Jack, lowering his voice. Collins came by the workshop this morning, looking for you. Asked about the library furniture designs. I told him you were working on them. Jack's jaw tightened. The redesigns he'd promised Collins sat untouched on his desk, his enthusiasm for the project having evaporated after learning its true context. Thanks, Miguel. I'll call him later. Miguel's dark eyes flickered to Emma, then back to Jack. There's something else. A guy came asking questions at the diner this morning. Chicago accent, expensive watch. Wanted to know about the new woman at the bookstore. Jack felt a cold prickle of apprehension travel up his spine. What did you tell him? Miguel's expression hardened. Nothing. Said I didn't know what he was talking about. But Jack, he had a photo of her. Recent one. Taken outside the store. Emma had moved to the children's corner with Abby, showing her where the reopening sign would hang. She looked almost carefree, her guard lowered in the child's company. Jack watched them, dread pooling in his stomach. Description? Miguel hesitated. Mid-30s, dark hair, short, scar on his right cheek, driving a rental with Illinois plates. Not Collins, someone else. Someone who had followed Emma from Chicago or been sent to find her. Jack nodded his thanks to Miguel, keeping his expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. Why don't you take Abby to the workshop? I need to finish these repairs, and she can help you with the sanding on Mrs. Peterson's rocking chair. Miguel caught the undertone in Jack's voice, understanding immediately. Come on, pequeña artista. Let's go make some sawdust, and maybe test those new wood stains that came in. Abby protested briefly, but the allure of the workshop's forbidden tools under supervised use proved stronger than her desire to stay at the bookstore. After extracting a promise from Emma to display her sign prominently, she skipped out with Miguel, chattering about wood types and colors. Once they were gone, Jack turned to Emma, who was already watching him with a knowing expression. Someone's looking for you, she nodded, unsurprised. I saw him yesterday watching the store from across the street. I was hoping he'd give up when he saw I wasn't alone. Jack moved closer, instinctively checking that the door was locked behind Abby and Miguel. Who is he? Another Collins family connection? Emma's hands twisted together, a nervous gesture he'd come to recognize. Michael's best friend, David Keller. He does errands for the family. If he's here, Michael sent him. The pieces clicked into place. The bruise Jack had noticed on Emma's wrist that first day, her fear when Collins recognized her, her determination to stand her ground despite it. Your ex-husband, he hurt you. It wasn't a question, but Emma answered anyway, her voice flat and factual. For 3 years. It started after his business failed. Small things at first, grabbing too hard, accidental shoves. By the end, he'd perfected the art of injuries that didn't show. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the now faded yellowish bruise. This was a goodbye present, a reminder of what happens when I don't do as I'm told. Jack's carpenter's hands curled into fists, an unfamiliar rage building in his chest. Emma noticed, shaking her head slightly. Violence doesn't solve violence, Jack. I learned that lesson thoroughly. Her calm rationality in the face of such injustice only fueled Jack's anger. What does he want? Why come after you now? Emma moved to the window, peering out at the quiet street before answering. Before I left, I took something. Papers from Michael's office safe. Proof of tax fraud, offshore accounts, records of bribes to city officials. Insurance, I called it. My guarantee that he'd let me go. Jack joined her at the window, scanning the street with new alertness. And now he wants it back. Emma nodded, her profile etched with tension. The Collins family is planning something big in Chicago, a development deal that needs city approval. Those papers could derail everything. I threatened to send copies to the FBI if Michael ever came near me again. The irony wasn't lost on Jack, Emma fleeing one Collins development scheme only to land in the middle of another. Have you told Martha any of this? Emma turned from the window, guilt flashing across her features. Not everything. She knows I'm divorced, that it was difficult. She doesn't know about David Keller watching the store, or why Robert recognized me. Jack weighed their options, running a hand through his hair. You should tell her. Martha deserves to know what she's involved in. The tension between them crackled with unspoken fears. Emma broke first, her composure cracking slightly. And if she asks me to leave? I have nowhere else to go, Jack. This job, this apartment, it's my last chance. The vulnerability in her admission hit Jack like a physical blow. Before he could respond, something crashed against the store's front window, a heavy object that thudded to the sidewalk without breaking the glass. Jack reacted instinctively, pulling Emma away from the window and toward the shelter of the bookshelves. They crouched in the history section, hearts pounding as they listened for further threats. When nothing followed, Jack cautiously approached the window. On the sidewalk lay a brick wrapped in paper, secured with rubber bands. He unlocked the door and retrieved it quickly, scanning the street for the culprit. Nothing but empty sidewalks and normal midday traffic. Back inside, Jack locked the door and unwrapped the brick. The note was typed, not handwritten, professional in its anonymity. Some stories should stay closed. Leave town before someone gets hurt. Emma read it over his shoulder, her face draining of color. That's not Michael's style. This is local, someone who knows I'm running the bookstore. Jack examined the brick. Ordinary red clay, the kind used in many Oak Ridge buildings, including the recent library expansion that Collins Development had overseen. This changes things. We need to call Sheriff Davis. Emma shook her head vehemently. No police. A report means questions about why someone would target me, which leads to Chicago, which leads to Michael. I can't risk it. Jack stared at her in disbelief. Someone just threatened you with a brick through a window, Emma. This isn't something you ignore. Her eyes met his, resolute despite her fear. I've lived with threats for years, Jack. The difference is, now I have something worth standing up for. The simplicity of her statement deflated his argument. Jack placed the brick on the counter, mind racing through alternatives. Then we don't open Monday. We wait, figure this out. Emma straightened, smoothing her shirt in a gesture that seemed to help her reclaim her composure. No, we open exactly as planned. That's what Martha would do. That's what I'm going to do. She moved to the register, pulling out a notepad and beginning to write. But we take precautions, security cameras, new locks, a proper alarm system. The current one is from the 1990s. Jack watched her methodical planning with growing admiration. The woman who had stood uncertainly in the diner 3 days ago now faced genuine danger with strategic calm. I know someone who installs security systems. Former student of my father's. He owes me a favor. Emma nodded, adding to her list without looking up. Good, and we need to document everything. This brick, the man watching the store, any interactions with Collins. If they're building a case against me, I need to build one too. Her practical approach steadied Jack. giving him direction amidst the swirl of concerns. I'll talk to Miguel, have him keep an eye out when I can't be here. And Abby, he faltered, the thought of his daughter caught in this escalating situation sending a spike of fear through his chest. Emma set down her pen, her expression softening. We'll protect her, Jack. I would never let anything happen to Abby. The promise hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to examine. Instead, Jack nodded and reached for his phone. I'll call about that security system now. As Emma returned to her inventory and Jack made arrangements for immediate security upgrades, the day's golden afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the newly organized shelves. Outside, Oak Ridge continued its peaceful small-town rhythms, unaware of the currents swirling around the quaint bookstore that had stood unchanged for decades. That evening, the Oak Ridge Town Hall buzzed with unusual energy. The monthly council meeting rarely attracted more than a handful of dedicated civic observers, but tonight every folding chair was filled, with standees lining the back wall. Jack slipped in just as Mayor Henderson called the meeting to order, finding a spot beside Miguel near the rear. The agenda moved swiftly through routine matters, road maintenance schedules, the upcoming Harvest Festival, committee reports delivered in the dry monotone of small-town governance. Jack's attention drifted until the mayor announced the final item, proposed Oak Ridge Heritage District development. Robert Collins rose from the front row, immaculate in a tailored suit that subtly communicated wealth without ostentation, perfectly calibrated for a small-town audience. Thank you, Mayor Henderson, council members, citizens of Oak Ridge. Tonight I present not just a development proposal, but a vision for our town's future. The lights dimmed as Collins activated a projector, displaying architectural renderings on the wall behind the council table. Gasps rippled through the audience at the images. Oak Ridge's historic Main Street transformed into a glossy version of itself, old buildings renovated with glass facades, new structures rising where familiar establishments now stood. Collins moved through his presentation with practiced charm, emphasizing economic benefits, increased tax revenue, new jobs, and modern amenities that would bring Oak Ridge into the 21st century while honoring its heritage. The bookstore building featured prominently, reimagined as a high-end cafe with book-themed elements, a ghost of its former purpose. Jack studied the audience reactions, some elderly residents frowning in disapproval, younger faces showing interest, business owners calculating potential impacts. Collins had clearly targeted his message to bridge generational divides, presenting change as inevitable progress rather than disruption. When Collins finished, Mayor Henderson opened the floor for public comment. The first speakers supported the development, a young mother wanting better shopping options, a recent college graduate lamenting limited local employment, a restaurant owner hoping for increased tourism. Then Martha Johnson's oldest friend, Eleanor Winters, took the microphone, her 83 years evident in her stooped posture, but not in her crisp delivery. I've watched Oak Ridge change for 8 decades. Some changes improved us, others nearly destroyed us. This proposal isn't progress, it's erasure. My friend Martha Johnson's store isn't just a building with book-themed elements. It's the heart of our town's intellectual life. These renderings might look pretty, but they show a town without a soul. Applause followed her statement, growing as she returned to her seat with dignity. More residents rose to speak, some supporting Collins's vision, others defending Oak Ridge's existing character. The division in the community became increasingly apparent. When the mayor called his name, Jack moved to the microphone, suddenly aware of all eyes tracking his movement. Public speaking had never been his strength, but tonight words came easily, fueled by conviction. I'm Jack Wilson. My family has lived in Oak Ridge for 4 generations. My great-grandfather built furniture for many of the buildings Mr. Collins wants to reimagine. I'm a carpenter like he was, and I know something about building things to last. He paused, scanning the room, finding Collins watching him with calculated interest. There's a difference between development and displacement, between progress and erasure. What makes Oak Ridge special isn't modernized facades or chain stores. It's places like Martha Johnson's bookstore, where my late wife found comfort during her illness, where my daughter now discovers stories that help her understand the world. It's knowing your neighbors and their histories. It's building things with care, not just for profit. Jack gestured toward Collins' sleek renderings. Those images look impressive, but they could be anywhere. Any generic small town made over to look like everywhere else. I'm not against progress, but I am against losing what makes us unique. Once we start selling our heritage building by building, we won't get it back. And what we lose will be worth far more than what these renderings promise. He returned to his seat amidst scattered applause, heart pounding. Miguel squeezed his shoulder in silent support as Collins rose again, his expression pleasant, but eyes cold. Mr. Wilson makes passionate points about preservation. I respect that perspective. But passion doesn't pay property taxes or create jobs for our young people who currently leave Oak Ridge for opportunities elsewhere. Sentiment doesn't fix aging infrastructure or attract new residents. My proposal offers balance, honoring Oak Ridge's past while securing its future. The debate continued for another hour, growing increasingly heated until Mayor Henderson finally called for adjournment, announcing that the council would continue consideration at next month's meeting after further community input. As the crowd dispersed into the cool evening air, Jack found himself face to face with Collins on the town hall steps. Passionate speech, Wilson. I didn't realize you had such strong feelings about urban development. Jack matched Collins's false civility with his own. I have strong feelings about Oak Ridge. This town raised me, supported me through losing Sarah, provides a good life for my daughter. I won't stand by while it's dismantled for profit. Collins' smile never wavered, but his voice dropped, intended for Jack's ears alone. Speaking of your daughter, charming child, so trusting, so attached to Ms. Parker already. Shame if she got hurt when Ms. Parker's past catches up with her. The threat, veiled but unmistakable, sent ice through Jack's veins. Before he could respond, Miguel appeared at his side, a deliberate presence. Jack, we should go. Abby's waiting up for her story. Collins nodded pleasantly to Miguel before turning back to Jack. Think about what I've said, Wilson. Some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when they aren't really yours. The library furniture redesigns. I'll need those by Friday. As Collins walked away toward his waiting sedan, Jack stood frozen on the steps, the implied threat against Abby replaying in his mind. Miguel guided him toward the truck, keeping a steadying hand on his shoulder. Breathe, amigo. He's trying to rattle you. That's all. Jack gripped the truck's door handle until his knuckles whitened. He threatened my daughter, Miguel. My 7-year-old daughter. Miguel's expression darkened. Then we protect her. We protect them both. The drive to Miguel's apartment, where Abby was waiting, passed in tense silence. Jack's mind raced through scenarios, confronting Collins directly, reporting the threat to Sheriff Davis, taking Abby and leaving town until the situation resolved. Each option seemed inadequate against the resources Collins commanded. Abby greeted him with sleepy enthusiasm at Miguel's door, unaware of the adult's tension as she clutched her backpack and favorite stuffed rabbit. Daddy! Miguel let me help sand the rocking chair, and I did it perfect. Then we had pizza and watched cartoons. Jack gathered her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, his fear transforming into fierce determination. Sounds like the perfect evening, Abby girl. Ready to head home? Miguel pulled Jack aside while Abby collected her things, slipping something into his pocket. My cousin's. It's registered, just in case. Jack felt the weight of the small handgun against his thigh, the metal warm from Miguel's body heat. He started to protest, but Miguel shook his head firmly. Not for using, for knowing it's there if you need it. Lock it up away from Pequeña, but keep it close. These people play by different rules, Jack. The drive home was filled with Abby's drowsy chatter about her day, the new bookstore sign, and her plans to help Emma organize the children's section on Saturday. Jack responded automatically, his mind still processing the evening's escalation. At home, he tucked Abby into her boat-shaped bed, listening to her prayers that now included Emma alongside their usual remembrance of Sarah. After she drifted off, Jack sat in his workshop behind the house, Miguel's gun on the table before him, its presence both reassuring and disturbing. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back door fixed yet? Need to talk. Important. E. Emma. Jack checked his watch. Nearly 11 p.m. He responded quickly. Yes. Come through the alley. I'll watch for you. 20 minutes later, a soft knock at the workshop door announced her arrival. Emma slipped inside, her face pale in the workbench light, clutching a manila envelope to her chest. Sorry for the late hour. I saw lights on and took a chance you'd be up. Jack secured the door behind her, gesturing toward a chair. What happened? Emma sank into the offered seat, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Someone broke into the apartment while I was at the hospital visiting Martha this evening. They searched everything but didn't take anything valuable. Not my laptop, not my wallet. Jack moved to the small refrigerator in the corner, retrieving 2 bottles of water. They were looking for the papers, the ones you took from your ex-husband. Emma nodded, accepting the water gratefully. They won't find them. They're not in the apartment. She patted the envelope in her lap, and Jack understood. She'd been carrying her insurance policy with her all along. That's dangerous, Emma. A hint of her dry humor surfaced, despite the circumstances. More dangerous than leaving them where Michael's people could find them? I've carried these everywhere since Chicago. Never let them out of my sight. Jack gestured toward the envelope. What exactly do they show? Emma hesitated, then carefully extracted several documents, spreading them on the clean surface of Jack's workbench. Bank statements for offshore accounts. Records of payments to Chicago officials for permit approvals. Tax documents showing millions in unreported income. And this, the reason I finally left. She separated out a single photograph. Michael Thompson, Robert Collins, and several other men standing around a hospital bed where an elderly man lay unconscious, signing papers held by a notary. Their grandfather, changing his will while heavily medicated after a stroke. I took this from the office the day after I overheard Michael bragging to Robert about how they'd secured the family fortune before the old man could give it to charity. Jack studied the photograph, recognizing the same predatory expression on both brothers' faces, the look he'd seen when Collins discussed Martha's store. This is serious criminal evidence, Emma. Why not turn it over to authorities? Emma's laugh held no humor. I tried. The Chicago police detective I spoke to was on Michael's payroll. The state's attorney's office never returned my calls. The one lawyer who agreed to help me suddenly dropped my case after a visit from Michael's friends. She gathered the documents with careful hands, returning them to the envelope. The system works differently for families like the Thompsons and the Collinses. Money insulates them from consequences. Until now, these papers were my only protection. The threat of exposure kept Michael at bay. Jack's gaze moved to the gun still lying on his workbench, its presence a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Emma followed his eyes, stiffening when she saw the weapon. Is that because of me? Because I brought this to your door? The guilt in her voice cut through Jack's own fear. It's because of them, Emma, not you, never you. Their eyes met across the workbench, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Emma broke the connection first, rising to her feet. I should go, it's late, and you have Abby to think about. Jack stood as well, suddenly unwilling to let her return to the compromised apartment alone. Stay here tonight, the couch in the living room folds out. It's safer than going back to a place they've already broken into. Emma hesitated, clutching the envelope tighter. Jack, they threatened Abby. Miguel told me what Collins said after the meeting. I can't put your family at risk because of my problems. Jack moved closer, his voice dropping to match the intimacy of the late hour. We're already involved, Emma. All of us. Me, Abby, Martha, this whole town. Whatever Collins is planning, it affects everything I care about. We face this together. The determined set of his jaw brooked no argument. After a moment, Emma nodded, the tight line of her shoulders relaxing slightly. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. As Jack led her into the quiet house, explaining in whispers where to find extra blankets and towels, showing her the bathroom and setting out a spare toothbrush, a strange domesticity settled over them. 2 wounded people finding unexpected alliance in the face of common enemies. Later, lying awake in his bedroom while Emma slept on the fold-out couch just down the hall, Jack confronted the growing certainty that defending Oak Ridge Bookhaven had become about much more than preserving a historic building or helping Martha Johnson. It had become about standing ground against those who saw people and places as commodities, chess pieces to be moved or sacrificed for profit. And somewhere amid that principled stand, it had become about Emma Parker herself, the wounded, resilient woman who had walked into his life 3 days ago and already carved out a space that felt essential, not just for Abby, but for him as well. Dawn crept through the windows of Jack's home, painting the living room in soft amber hues. Emma sat perched on the edge of the folded couch, fully dressed, manila envelope secure in her bag. She'd slept fitfully, hyper-aware of being in Jack's space, of Abby sleeping just down the hall. The borrowed t-shirt he'd given her to sleep in lay neatly folded on the pillow. In the kitchen, coffee brewed automatically, its rich aroma filtering through the house. Emma hesitated, torn between slipping out quietly and waiting to say goodbye. The decision was made for her when tiny feet padded down the hallway and Abby appeared, rubby-eyed in unicorn pajamas. "Emma, did you have a sleepover? Are you staying for pancakes?" Emma's carefully constructed exit plan dissolved under the child's hopeful gaze. "Just visiting early, sweetie. Your dad helped me with some bookstore plans last night." Abby clambered onto the couch beside her, morning breath and strawberry shampoo mingling as she snuggled close. "Daddy makes the best pancakes on Saturdays, with blueberries inside them. You should stay." The simple invitation lodged in Emma's chest, a dangerous warmth spreading outward. This was the risk she hadn't calculated. Not just Jack's protective instincts or her own growing feelings, but Abby's innocent attachment. Jack appeared in the hallway, hair mussed from sleep, eyes alert despite the early hour. Something unreadable crossed his face at the sight of them together on the couch. "You're up early? Both of you?" Emma stood, creating distance, reclaiming professional detachment. "I should get back to the store." The security system installation is scheduled for 8. Jack moved to the kitchen, reaching for coffee mugs with the unconscious ease of routine. Eat something first. Saturday morning pancakes are non-negotiable in this house. What began as a hasty exit transformed into morning domesticity. Abby setting the table, Jack mixing batter, Emma slicing fruit. They moved around each other in the small kitchen, establishing a rhythm that felt disconcertingly natural. Over breakfast, they kept conversation light for Abby's benefit, discussing reopening plans and her role as official artistic director for store signage. But beneath the casual dialogue flowed currents of unspoken concern. The break-in, Collins's veiled threats, the man from Chicago still lurking somewhere in Oak Ridge. When the doorbell rang, Jack tensed, instinctively moving toward the drawer where he'd locked Miguel's gun the night before. Emma laid a restraining hand on his arm. "Let me check first." She peered through the front window, her body relaxing at the sight of Sheriff Davis's official vehicle in the driveway. "It's the sheriff." Jack opened the door to Keith Davis, a barrel-chested man whose weathered face reflected 20 years of Oak Ridge law enforcement. The sheriff declined coffee with an apologetic wave. "Sorry to interrupt your Saturday, Jack. Got a situation down at the bookstore I thought you should know about." "Morning, Ms. Parker. Figured you might be here when you weren't at the apartment." Emma stiffened, suddenly aware how this might appear. Her sleeping at Jack's house, the domestic scene the sheriff had interrupted. What happened at the store? Davis removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "Someone spray-painted the front window overnight. 'Go Home, Chicago' in red. And there was another brick, this time through the side window. Security company called it in when their installer arrived." Jack's jaw tightened, a muscle working beneath the stubble he hadn't yet shaved. "Abby, go get dressed, please. Pick out your favorite clothes for helping at the bookstore today." Once Abby disappeared down the hall, the adults spoke freely, voices low but urgent. "This makes 3 incidents in less than a week. The brick yesterday, the apartment break-in, and now vandalism. Sheriff, this is escalating." Davis nodded at Jack's assessment, his expression grim. "Got deputies canvassing for witnesses. Not much camera coverage on that side of Maple Street, unfortunately. Ms. Parker, can you think of anyone with reason to target you specifically?" Emma exchanged a glance with Jack, weighing how much to reveal. "I'm new in town, Sheriff. The only person I've had any negative interaction with is Robert Collins, and that was minimal." Davis's weathered face revealed nothing, but his eyes sharpened. "Collins, huh? Interesting timing with his development proposal just presented. Any connection there you can think of?" Before Emma could respond, Jack interjected. "Sheriff, Emma's taken over Martha Johnson's store temporarily. The same store Collins tried to pressure Martha to sell while she was medicated in the hospital." Davis scribbled notes in a small pad, his handwriting surprisingly neat for such large fingers. "I'll look into it. Meanwhile, I'd recommend you both stay alert. Miss Parker, you might want to make other living arrangements until we sort this out. The apartment above the store is too isolated after hours. The implications hung heavy in the morning air. Emma stared at her coffee, avoiding Jack's gaze. "Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate your concern." Davis replaced his hat, moving toward the door. "I'll increase patrols around the store." "Jack, walk me out." The men stepped onto the porch, voices drifting through the partially open door as Emma cleared breakfast dishes. "Watch yourself, Jack. Town's buzzing about Mrs. Parker staying at your place. Some folks still remember Sarah, think it's too soon." Jack's response carried a sharp edge Emma hadn't heard before. "My personal life isn't relevant to someone vandalizing Martha's store. And Sarah's been gone 5 years, Keith. Not that it's anyone's business." Davis's reply was too low to catch. But when Jack returned, his expression had hardened into determination. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. "I'll drive you to the store. We'll assess the damage, meet with the security installer, and make a plan." Abby bounded back into the room wearing a sparkly purple shirt and mismatched leggings, her energy untouched by the adult concerns swirling around her. "I'm ready. Can I help clean up the mean words? I have my special eraser from school." The collision of innocence with ugliness struck Emma like physical pain. This child, offering rainbow erasers against hatred she couldn't comprehend. Emma knelt to Abby's level, smoothing a wild strand of hair behind her ear. "The glass is broken, sweetie, so it's not safe for you today. But I have another very important job. We need someone to make beautiful new signs to cover the boards that will temporarily replace the window. Could you work on those at your dad's workshop?" Abby considered this alternative mission, head tilted in serious contemplation. "I could make them extra colorful so nobody looks at the boring boards, and draw happy faces so people aren't scared to come in." Emma's throat tightened at the child's instinctive understanding. That art could combat fear, that beauty might answer ugliness. That's exactly what we need. The official artistic director of Oak Ridge Bookhaven on the job. The drive to the bookstore revealed the full impact of the night's vandalism. Red paint dripped down the front display window like blood, the crude message visible from blocks away. Shattered glass from the side window glittered on the sidewalk. Yellow police tape cordoned off the entrance, a deputy logging evidence while curious townspeople gathered across the street. Jack gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. This isn't random teenage vandalism. This is targeted intimidation. Emma gazed at the defaced storefront, mind racing through implications. The break-in at the apartment had been subtle, professional. Likely Michael's man, David Keller, searching for the documents. This attack was different. Public, messy, designed to create spectacle and fear. Two separate threats, converging on one target, her. Inside, the security technician waited, a stocky man with a tool belt who introduced himself as Rick. He walked them through the system he'd begun installing: motion sensors, glass break detectors, panic buttons, cameras covering every approach to the building. "Got a call from Sheriff Davis this morning, so I brought extra equipment. This'll be the most secure bookstore in Minnesota when I'm done." As Rick returned to work, Emma surveyed the damage. Glass fragments sparkled across the children's section rug. The brick lay where it had fallen, wrapped in another typed note. Jack retrieved it carefully, unfolding the paper. "Last warning, next time it's fire." The threat hung between them, escalating from property damage to potential arson, from intimidation to life-threatening danger. Emma sank onto a step stool, the weight of responsibility crushing against her ribs. "I need to leave. I'm putting Martha's store at risk. I'm putting Abby at risk. You at risk." Jack crouched beside her, his voice low and fierce. "That's exactly what they want. To isolate you, to make you run." Emma gestured around the damaged store, frustration cracking her composure. "Look around, Jack. They're winning. Every day I stay, the danger increases. I won't be responsible for a fire that destroys Martha's life's work." Jack took her hands, his calloused fingers warm against her cold ones. "Running won't solve this. Michael will find you somewhere else. Collins will get Martha's store anyway. The only way through is forward, together." The security technician cleared his throat awkwardly from across the room. Folks? Someone's trying to come in. Older lady with a walker." They turned to see Martha Johnson herself at the door, leaning heavily on a walker, determination etched in every line of her 82-year-old face. Jack hurried to help her inside, careful of the glass. Martha, you should be in rehab. What are you doing here? Martha surveyed her damaged store with fierce dignity, spine straight despite the walker supporting her weight. You think I'd stay away when some coward attacks my life's work? Carolyn called from the council. Told me everything. She moved slowly to the center of the store, touching shelves and books as if reassuring herself they remained intact. 50 years in this town. 50 years in this store. Never seen anything like this. Emma approached cautiously, guilt weighing each step. Martha, I'm so sorry. This is because of me, because I agreed to watch the store. Martha's piercing blue eyes fixed on Emma with surprising intensity. Nonsense, child. This is because some people value property over community, money over history. My husband always said you could judge a person's character by how they treat books. Whoever did this revealed exactly who they are. She lowered herself carefully into the antique chair behind the register counter. Her throne, as regular customers called it. Now tell me everything, and don't spare details thinking you're protecting an old woman. I've survived wars, recessions, the internet, and 2 hip replacements. I can handle the truth. For the next hour, Emma and Jack filled Martha in on everything. The connection to Collins through Emma's ex-husband, the threatening bricks, the break-in at the apartment, the documents Emma carried as insurance. Martha listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly resolute. When they finished, she nodded once, decisively. Emma, open that cabinet behind you, the one with the elephant handle. Emma complied, finding an old metal lockbox inside. Martha produced a key from her purse. Thomas kept evidence too. Open it. Inside lay yellowed newspaper clippings, legal documents, and photographs dating back to the 1960s. Martha spread them across the counter with practiced hands. The Collins family didn't get rich through honest business. Thomas discovered this when researching property records for a history book. Harold Collins, Robert's grandfather, acquired half his properties through foreclosure manipulation during the farm crisis, including this building. She tapped a deed transfer document with a gnarled finger. The original owner was my father. Harold Collins was his bank manager. He misdirected mortgage payments, then claimed default. Did it to a dozen families. Thomas found the evidence, confronted him, and forced him to sell this building back to us at fair price. Jack leaned closer, examining the old documents. That's why Collins wants this place so badly. It's not just about development, it's about family history. Martha's smile held no warmth. Revenge and greed, the Collins family specialties. Now they're using the same playbook. Targeting vulnerable property owners, applying pressure, creating crisis. Robert's grandfather would be proud. She gathered the documents, returning them to the lockbox. Emma, you were right to keep your evidence close. The Collins family has been silencing people for generations, but they've never faced the combined stubbornness of a Johnson and a Parker. The woman's unflinching support bolstered Emma's wavering rehearsal. Martha reached out, patting Emma's hand with surprising strength. Now enough dwelling on troubles. We have a store to restore and reopen. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, just as planned. Jack shook his head in amazement. Martha, the window's broken. There's glass everywhere. The children's rug is ruined. Martha waved dismissively. Details. You're a carpenter, aren't you? Board up the window today. Proper replacement next week. Emma knows books. I know this community. Between us, we'll be ready by Monday. Her certainty was infectious. As Martha directed operations from her chair, the atmosphere shifted from defeated to determined. Jack called Miguel to bring tools for boarding the window. Emma contacted other shopkeepers, arranging a weekend cleanup. The security technician, inspired by Martha's spirit, offered to complete the entire system that day. By noon, a transformation was underway. Volunteers appeared with brooms, buckets, and casseroles. Mayor Henderson arrived with coffee and donuts for the workers. Abby set up at a small table outside, creating colorful signs that Miguel would help attach to the temporary boards. As Emma swept glass from beneath a bookshelf, she overheard Martha speaking quietly to Jack. That child of yours looks at Emma the way she used to look at Sarah. And you look at Emma the way you looked at Sarah before you got the courage to ask her out. Some books are meant to have sequels, Jack Wilson. Emma pretended not to hear, focusing intently on her sweeping, but warmth bloomed in her chest despite her determination to remain detached. She had come to Oak Ridge seeking only sanctuary and employment. Instead, she'd found community, purpose, and something with Jack that frightened her with its potential. The afternoon progressed with steady work and growing camaraderie. Sheriff Davis returned with news. The paint matched a batch recently purchased at the hardware store by one of Collins's construction supervisors. Not enough for arrest, but enough to file a formal report connecting the vandalism to Collins' development. As sunlight began to fade, the store stood transformed. Plywood covered the broken windows, now brightened by Abby's hand-painted signs proclaiming, "Books inside." Grand reopening Monday. The interior gleamed from thorough cleaning, security cameras monitored all approaches, and volunteers had replaced the glass-damaged rug in the children's corner with a donated carpet featuring a colorful map of an imaginary kingdom. Martha presided over it all from her chair, issuing directives, accepting casseroles, and reassuring concerned patrons. As the last volunteers departed, she beckoned Emma and Jack closer. "I'm returning to the rehabilitation center tonight, but I'll be back for the reopening." Sheriff Davis arranged a patrol car to watch the store overnight. "Emma, you'll stay with Jack again." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. Before Emma could protest, Martha continued, "The apartment isn't safe until we know who's watching the store. Jack has space, and that gun Miguel gave him. Don't look surprised. This town has no secrets. You'll both be safer together." Jack nodded, accepting Martha's directive without argument. "We'll drop you at rehab, then pick up Emma's essentials from the apartment." As they helped Martha into Jack's truck, her frail body belying her indomitable spirit, she gripped Emma's hand. "Remember, dear, books survive burning, banning, and bigotry. So do the women who love them. We're made of stronger stuff than men like Collins understand." The rehabilitation center welcomed Martha back with gentle admonishments about unauthorized departures. After settling her in and promising updates, Jack and Emma drove to the apartment above the bookstore in heavy silence, both processing the day's events. The apartment showed lingering signs of the break-in, dresser drawers not quite closed, books slightly misaligned on shelves, the faint impression of boot prints on the small bathroom rug. Emma packed quickly, limiting herself to essentials: clothes, toiletries, her laptop, and most importantly, the manila envelope that never left her sight. As she zipped her duffel bag, headlights swept across the wall, a car pulling up beside the store. Jack moved to the window, peering carefully through the blinds. Black sedan, same one that followed you the other day. Emma joined him at the window, recognizing the vehicle immediately. "That's David Keller, Michael's enforcer." They watched as a man emerged from the car. Athletic build, short dark hair, the scar on his right cheek visible even in the dim street lighting. He surveyed the boarded-up storefront, then tilted his head upward, studying the apartment windows where they stood. Jack eased back from the blinds, keeping his voice low. "He knows you're here. We need to leave without him seeing us." Emma's mind raced through options. The back staircase. It leads down to the storeroom. If he's watching the front, we might make it to your truck without being seen. They moved silently through the apartment, Emma leading the way down the narrow back stairs that Martha used for private deliveries. At the bottom, Jack eased the storeroom door open, checking for signs of intrusion. Finding none, they slipped into the shadowed space, navigating around boxes and shelving units. The back door, recently repaired by Jack, offered escape to the alley behind Maple Street. Jack pressed his ear against it, listening for movement outside. "I think it's clear. My truck's 1 block over. Stay close to me." Emma clutched her bag tighter, the documents inside worth more than her life to the man watching the front of the store. "If something happens, get these papers to Sheriff Davis. They're my only leverage." Jack's hand closed over hers, warm and steady. "Nothing's going to happen. We're leaving together." He eased the door open, revealing an empty alley bathed in twilight shadows. They slipped out, Jack locking the door behind them, and moved quickly along the brick wall of the bookstore toward the side street where he'd parked. They were halfway to safety when a figure stepped into their path. David Keller, his scar vivid against his pale skin, his smile empty of warmth. "Emma Parker, Michael's been worried sick about you." Jack stepped slightly in front of Emma, his body coiled with tension. "She doesn't want to see him. Keep walking, friend." Keller's attention flicked to Jack, assessing and dismissing him in an instant. This doesn't concern you, Carpenter. This is family business. Emma moved forward, refusing to hide behind Jack. Tell Michael he'll get what he wants when he stops threatening me. The documents stay with me until then. Keller's expression remained pleasant, almost bored. That arrangement no longer works for Michael. He needs those papers before the zoning commission meeting next week. Chicago politics. Delicate timing. He stepped closer, hand sliding inside his jacket. Nothing personal, Emma, just business. The papers, please. Jack's voice cut through the tension. You're about 50 feet from a security camera that was installed this morning. Every move you make is being recorded and uploaded to a cloud server. Sheriff Davis has your description and license plate. Keller hesitated, eyes flicking to the roofline of the bookstore where a camera was indeed visible, its small red light blinking in the gathering darkness. That won't save you tonight. A new voice joined the confrontation. Miguel, emerging from the shadows of the alley, a crowbar resting casually over his shoulder. Maybe not, but I will. We don't like visitors threatening our friends in Oak Ridge. Keller recalculated, outnumbered, and now on camera. His hand slipped from his jacket. Empty. This isn't finished. Michael won't stop until he gets what's his. Emma felt a surge of courage born from the presence of allies beside her. Nothing in these documents belongs to Michael. They show what he stole, who he bribed, how he cheated. If anything happens to me, copies go to the FBI, the IRS, and the Chicago Tribune. Keller's expression flickered, a flash of concern breaking through professional detachment. You're playing a dangerous game, Emma. Not everyone in this situation is as reasonable as I am. Jack stepped forward, patience visibly thinning. Message delivered. Now leave, while walking is still an option. For a moment, violence hung in the air like electricity before a lightning strike. Then Keller nodded, backing away, with hands slightly raised. Think about what's at stake, Emma. Is this town, these people, worth dying for? He disappeared around the corner, leaving the threat lingering in the cool evening air. Miguel approached, crowbar still in hand. I saw his car circling when I drove by to check on the store. Figured you might need backup. Jack clasped Miguel's shoulder, gratitude evident in the gesture. Perfect timing. As always. Let's get out of here before he decides to return with friends. They hurried to Jack's truck, Emma's heart pounding with residual adrenaline and dawning realization. Keller's appearance confirmed what she'd feared. Michael wasn't just trying to recover incriminating documents. He was eliminating the witness who understood their significance. The drive to Jack's house passed in tense silence, each lost in private calculations of risk and responsibility. Only when they pulled into his driveway, where lights glowed warmly from within, and Mrs. Abernathy from next door waved from the porch where she'd been watching Abby, did Emma speak. I can't stay here. I've brought this to your doorstep. To Abby. Jack cut the engine, turning to face her fully in the dim truck cabin. You heard, Keller. You're a target, whether you're alone or with us. At least here, you have people watching your back. Emma clutched her bag, the weight of the documents inside suddenly unbearable. I could end this, give Michael what he wants, disappear somewhere new. Jack's hand covered hers, warm and steady on the seat between them. And then what? Keep running forever? Let Collins take Martha's store? Let men like them win because intimidation works? His question struck at the heart of her exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of years spent accommodating, placating, and eventually fleeing men who use power as a weapon. Emma, sometimes standing your ground isn't about winning. It's about refusing to let someone else decide what you're worth, what your life is worth. The simple truth of his words penetrated her defenses. 5 years ago, she had married Michael, believing herself lucky to be chosen by someone so powerful. 3 years of diminishment later, she had fled with nothing but these damning papers and a bruised body. Now, in this small town, strangers had rallied to protect not just a bookstore, but her right to begin again. Mrs. Abernathy waved again from the porch, signaling it was time to relieve her babysitting duties. Jack squeezed Emma's hand once before releasing it, one day at a time. Tonight, we're safe. Tomorrow, we prepare for the reopening. Monday, we show Collins and Keller that Oak Ridge Bookhaven isn't going anywhere. The weekend passed in hyper-vigilant preparation. Sheriff Davis increased patrols past both the bookstore and Jack's house. The security system installation was completed, with Emma and Jack both receiving alerts on their phones for any triggered sensors. Miguel took shifts watching the store overnight, sleeping on a cot in the storeroom. Monday morning arrived clear and crisp, autumn sunlight gilding the fiery maples along Main Street. Emma stood before the mirror in Jack's guest bathroom, applying makeup with uncharacteristic care. Today mattered, not just for the bookstore's reopening, but as a declaration that threats wouldn't succeed. Jack and Abby waited in the kitchen, Abby vibrating with excitement in her official bookstore helper shirt, a creation Emma had helped her decorate the previous evening. Jack checked his watch, car keys already in hand. Ready for the grand reopening, Ms. Parker? Emma smoothed her blouse. A new one purchased yesterday from the boutique down the street from the bookstore. Her first non-essential expenditure in months. As ready as I'll ever be. The drive to Oak Ridge Bookhaven revealed an unexpected sight. A line of people already waiting outside the boarded-up windows, coffee cups in hand, conversation flowing among neighbors. Mayor Henderson stood at the front, clipboard in hand as if organizing the impromptu gathering. Jack parked around back, allowing them to enter through the storeroom. Inside, Emma was startled to find Martha already installed in her chair behind the counter, dressed in her finest cardigan, silver hair arranged in its customary bun. "Martha, how did you get here so early?" Martha's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Sheriff Davis picked me up at 6, said he needed to check the premises before opening. I suspect he just wanted first crack at the new mystery section." The sheriff himself emerged from between the shelves, a stack of books in his arms. "Found those Raymond Chandler first editions you mentioned, Martha, adding them to my tab." The casual normalcy of the transaction, as if this were any ordinary Monday rather than a reopening after vandalism and threats, steadied Emma's nerves. This was what they were protecting, not just a business, but a space where community happened naturally, where sheriff and mayor and carpenter and bookstore owner existed in easy equilibrium. At precisely 9 o'clock, Mayor Henderson knocked on the front door. Martha nodded regally from her throne. "Abby, would you do the honors? Official artistic director should open the doors on reopening day." Abby's face lit with importance as she solemnly approached the door, turning the lock with deliberate ceremony. The waiting crowd applauded as she swung the door wide, proudly announcing, "Oak Ridge Bookhaven is open. We have the best books, and they're not scared of mean people." Emma felt her carefully constructed professional demeanor crack at Abby's innocent defiance. Jack moved beside her, his presence solid and reassuring as the first customers entered, making a point of complimenting the colorful signs covering the boarded windows. The morning passed in a blur of transactions, conversations, and subtle shows of community support. Regular customers bought more than usual. Newcomers appeared, mentioning they'd heard about the vandalism and wanted to show solidarity. Martha held court from her chair, regaling visitors with bookstore history and recommending titles with unerring precision. Shortly before noon, a hush fell over the crowded store as Robert Collins himself appeared in the doorway, immaculately dressed as always, a calculating smile on his lips. He surveyed the scene, the boarded windows now covered in cheerful community artwork, the bustling interior, Martha presiding over it all like a queen. "Mrs. Johnson, wonderful to see you up and about. I came to express my sincere regret about the vandalism." Shocking behavior. Martha's smile could have frozen flame. "How thoughtful, Mr. Collins. Though I'm surprised you found time, given your busy schedule of threatening my friends and destroying my property." Collins didn't flinch, his practiced composure unbreakable. "Serious accusations, Mrs. Johnson. I hope you have evidence before making such claims publicly." Emma moved to Martha's side, meeting Collins's gaze directly. "Evidence is something both our families understand the value of, Mr. Collins. Some of us collect it more carefully than others." Something flickered behind Collins's eyes. A momentary calculation, a reassessment. He glanced around the store, noting Sheriff Davis browsing nearby, Jack watching intently from the children's corner where he sat with Abby. "Well, I merely came to offer my support to a valued Oak Ridge institution, and to remind you, Mrs. Johnson, that my offer to purchase remains open. Should you reconsider the burdens of ownership during your recovery?" Martha's spine straightened, her 82 years falling away as she delivered her response with perfect clarity. "Mr. Collins, let me be exceptionally clear. This store is not for sale, not to you, not to your company, not to any member of your family. Not now, not ever. Furthermore, should anything else happen to my property or my employees, I have instructed my attorney to deliver certain historical documents regarding your grandfather to the County Historical Society. I believe they're assembling an exhibit on banking practices during the farm crisis. The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Collins's smile remained fixed, but a muscle twitched near his eye. History is often misinterpreted, Mrs. Johnson. Documents without context can be misleading. Martha's returned smile was serene. Indeed, context is everything. Perhaps you should discuss context with your brother Michael. I understand he is quite concerned about certain documents himself. Collins' composure slipped for a fraction of a second, genuine surprise breaking through his mask. His gaze snapped to Emma, reassessing everything about her presence in Oak Ridge. Before he could respond, Abby approached, a children's book clutched to her chest. She stopped directly in front of Collins, looking up with unfiltered 7-year-old assessment. Are you the man who wants to break the bookstore? My daddy says people who only care about money have very small hearts, like the Grinch before Christmas. The unscripted confrontation left Collins momentarily speechless. Jack moved swiftly to his daughter's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Collins recovered quickly, professional smile returning as he addressed the child. Books are wonderful, young lady, but progress is important too. Sometimes old things must make way for new things. Abby considered this with serious concentration before delivering her verdict. But the best books are old and new. Miss Emma showed me. The old stories get new pictures and new covers, but they keep the good parts that people love. That's the smartest way. From the mouths of babes, wisdom that struck directly at the philosophical heart of the conflict. Martha chuckled from her chair, pride evident in her weathered face. Well said, Abby Wilson. Old and new together, preservation and progress in harmony. Perhaps Mr. Collins could learn something from children's literature. Collins recognized defeat in this particular skirmish, nodding curtly to the assembled group. I'll leave you to your reopening celebration. Good day, Mrs. Johnson. Miss Parker will speak again soon, I'm sure. He exited with dignity intact but authority diminished, the bell above the door chiming cheerfully in his wake. The store seemed to exhale collectively once he departed, conversations resuming with renewed energy. Sheriff Davis drifted casually to Martha's counter. Interesting conversation. Anything I should know about Martha? Martha patted his hand with grandmotherly affection. Nothing yet, Keith, but keep your investigation open. I suspect Mr. Collins will make another move soon. The rest of opening day passed without incident, a steady stream of customers depleting inventory and filling the cash register. By closing time, Emma's feet ached and her voice had grown hoarse from answering questions, but satisfaction radiated through her exhaustion. They had stood their ground. The store had reopened. The community had rallied. As Jack locked the front door after the final customer, Martha beckoned Emma and him closer. You two did wonderfully today, but this isn't over. Collins and his Chicago brother won't give up so easily. They've invested too much in their respective plans. Jack leaned against the counter, fatigue evident in the slump of his shoulders. What's our next move? Martha reached beneath the counter, withdrawing a large manila envelope similar to the one Emma carried. These are copies of everything Thomas collected about Harold Collins's business practices. I had my attorney make additional copies this morning. One set to his safe, one to the Historical Society vault, one to Sheriff Davis. Insurance, as Emma would say. She slid the envelope across the counter to Emma. Add these to your collection. Together, they tell a 60-year story of one family's corruption. If Collins makes another move against any of us, all of it goes public. His grandfather's sins and his brother's crimes together. Emma accepted the envelope, understanding the strategy. One generation's evidence might be dismissed as historical irrelevance. 2 generations established a pattern. Together, they created an unassailable narrative of corruption. Jack helped Martha into her coat, concern evident in his gentle movements. This puts you at risk too, Martha. Martha's laugh held genuine amusement. I'm 82 with a broken hip, Jack. What exactly do I have to lose? Besides, old women are civilization's most dangerous force. We have nothing to fear and no one expects us to fight back. After settling Martha into Sheriff Davis's car for the return trip to rehabilitation, Jack, Emma, and Abby closed up the bookstore together. Abby insisted on checking every shelf was straight, every book properly aligned, taking her role as helper with profound seriousness. Outside, autumn darkness had fallen, streetlights casting pools of golden light along Maple Street. The boarded windows, transformed by community artwork, no longer looked like symbols of violation, but rather badges of resilience. As they walked to Jack's truck, Abby between them, spontaneously holding both their hands, Emma felt something settle within her, a certainty that had been missing since she fled Chicago with nothing but damning papers and determination. Whatever came next, whether Collins escalated or retreated, whether Michael sent more threats or finally accepted defeat, she would face it standing firm, not running scared. Oak Ridge had given her something Chicago never had. People who stood beside her not because of what she could provide, but simply because it was right. And Jack Wilson, walking quietly beside her with his daughter between them, had shown her something she'd forgotten existed. That strength could be gentle, that protection didn't require control, that some men built things to last rather than to impress. As they reached the truck, Jack helped Abby into her booster seat before turning to Emma, his expression thoughtful in the streetlight's glow. You know, for temporary arrangements, we're doing pretty well. Emma smiled, recognizing the invitation beneath his casual observation, not just for tonight's refuge, but for whatever might follow tomorrow, and all the days after. Some of the best stories start as temporary arrangements. It's what happens in the middle chapters that matters most. Jack's answering smile held promise. Neither was ready to name, but both had begun to accept. Whatever threat still loomed, from Collins, from Michael, from all the forces that valued profit above people, they would face them together, building something neither had expected to find in the unlikeliest of places. A second chance, bound as securely as the books they had sworn to protect.